Hello, everybody, and welcome to Everything But the Cats, the only show where you can see me every week wearing a black or red t-shirt. My name's Gage.
I'm DJ.
And today, DJ is going to be teaching me about the beauty of the Electoral College, or something.
Sure. Do you want to learn about the Electoral College?
Not really.
Yeah, that's great, because I have no notes on it. It's a fun idea. I get the heart behind it. The people from the little states wanted to make sure the big states something or other. I get it.
Representative democracy, yada yada. What are we talking about?
We're going to get into that.
Okay.
So Gage, there's a chance that as I read this little introduction, as we both like to read little introductions.
Yes.
There's a chance that as I read it, you know what I'm talking about. Dear listener, there's a chance that as I read this, you will know what I'm talking about. Sorry, the hair got in my mouth.
Happens all the time.
It wasn't mine. It was like a Woody fluff or something.
Okay.
Yeah. It could happen to you, Gage. But anyways, if you know what it is, I request that you keep your trap shut and just be proud of yourself, and then let me know afterwards, like, I knew what that was going to be.
Okay.
So, anyways, it's October 2nd, 1977. You're leaning forward in your seat at Dodger Stadium, your knuckles white as you grip the armrests. The air is heavy with the scent of popcorn and the electric, low-frequency hum of 46,000 people who are all holding their breath. This is the final day of the regular season, the very last chance for the record. You haven't been watching the scoreboard for the score, you've been watching it for one specific number. 3 Dodgers, Steve Garvey, Reggie Smith, and Ron Cey, have already crossed the 30 home run threshold. No team in the 100-year history of Major League Baseball has ever had 4. You're staring at Dusty Baker, standing in the dugout, stuck on 29. Every out recorded has been a tick of the clock toward the record book being slammed shut. What's coming up isn't just an at-bat, it's the climax of a season-long chase for the impossible. In the 6th inning, the moment arrives. Baker strides to the plate, and the stadium falls into a localized silence. Standing 60 feet away is the Astros' J.R. Richard, a 6'8" titan who throws a fastball that makes even the best batters look silly. The crowd goes silent with anticipation as the pitcher winds up. Then it happens. Crack. The sound is different. Sharper. Louder. A definitive punctuation mark. You're on your feet before the ball even clears the shortstop's head. You watch it soar, a white speck against the blue California sky, finally disappearing into the left field pavilion. The roar that erupts isn't just for a run, it's for the birth of the impossible quartet. History has been made. The 1977 Dodgers have become the first team to ever boast 4 30 home run hitters. As Baker rounds the bases, he looks like a man who has just survived a storm. The weight of the season, the pressure of the record, the sheer exhaustion of the chase, it's all there in his stride. But as he nears home plate, you notice that something strange is happening. Waiting for him in the on-deck circle is Glenn Burke. Burke is the life of the team, a man who breathes energy into the dugout. He's vibrating with an uncontainable kinetic force. He doesn't wait for a handshake. He doesn't offer a pat on the back. Instead, Burke lunges forward and thrusts his right hand over his head, his palm open, his body arching back toward the dugout. Baker hesitates for a moment. In 1977, this doesn't happen. Ball players offer firm grips or stoic nods, but in this moment, instinct took over and the world was forever changed. Years later, Baker would say, his hand was up in the air and he was arching way back, so I reached up and hit his hand. It seemed like the thing to do. And so it was. In that split second, as hand meets hand and the sound reverberates around the infield, the record book takes a back seat. Because you and everyone else at the stadium with you have just witnessed the first high five. Or have you? We're going to talk about that.
Okay. I did not know where this was going.
I hoped it would be a little mysterious and dramatic.
Yeah, no, because, and obviously we're going to talk about it, but my gut reaction is that the high five had to exist before the 70s.
Before 1977. Yeah.
Yeah, because like that's after my dad was born.
Uh-huh. No, I was talking to my mom the other day. I was like, who do you think is older? You or the high five? And she was like, the high five. Duh. Okay, great. Glad to hear it. So this is actually a pretty interesting story, an idea. So Glenn Burke, Dusty Baker, I almost said Rusty Baker. Dusty Baker. Excuse me. They're both African American men. And so there's like, the phrase African American history is American history, which just means a lot of times we put African American history into its own bucket, but like it's American, like it's a part of us. It's a part of what makes us us. But there's also an extra part of it that we're going to get into a little bit later. So it's just kind of interesting how a few different things converge and some of the theories and all that. So that's what we're in for, is we're just doing a deep dive into the origins of the high five.
I love the idea, just based on your wording, I love the idea that high fives, there's theories about the origins based on different people groups' histories and stuff like that. And I love that. I am so excited for this.
Well, let me give you my first brief little nugget of not wisdom, I guess, but like where we're going. It's called a high five, which means the first
word. Drugs.
We're doing drugs. No, the first word in the name of this is an adjective, something that specifies the type of five it is. If this was the default five, you might expect it to be called the five, but it's not called the five.
Yeah.
So first, we have to go back to the 1920s.
Wait, there was like a palm thrust?
No, it's actually my whole thing about it being like an adjective, so it's not the original, is a little tricky because anyways, in the 1920s, you go back to like jazz culture and all that, and you have what's called the low five. And this is kind of where it began. So it was a documented cornerstone of African American culture since at least the 1920s. It documented a lot in terms of like the Harlem Renaissance and kind of just the broader jazz era. So 1920s, let's paint the picture of America. There are some seasons of American history where it's not particularly great to be an African American person. I'll wear my liberal heart on my sleeve and say that generally it's like you and I probably have a better time than like the average African American experience. So like, anyways, all that to say, the 20s were worse. So you've got like Jim Crow and all of those sorts of things. Still some like segregation, like all of that stuff. And so racism is very alive and well in kind of more direct ways than a lot of what we see nowadays. So it was harder. I don't think it's controversial. I'm trying to avoid controversial things. It was harder, I assume, to be an African American person in the 1920s than it is in the 20s, even though I don't think it's a walk in the park in the 20s. So along the way, there end up being a few sort of like secret handshakes, sort of, and it's just as a way to like show solidarity. And then one of those was the low five. And now, help me, when I say the low five, what do you picture?
Well, so when I was growing up, we would do like high five, low five, and low five. Normally, the way we would do it is someone would have their hand down and you would kind of come at it from above and hit it down, like, and go downward with your hand toward theirs that was already low. I'm imagining that wasn't it.
Did that make you feel solidarity with your parents or whatever?
Especially because, well, it was normally because I was short and I needed to be able to hit their hand.
So definitely some solidarity.
Definitely
there.
some solidarity because they were
Yeah.
reaching out to me.
Great.
No, I think, but I imagine that maybe it would be like as you're passing, kind of like how nowadays we have like the nod that a lot of people do, where like you pass someone and you're just like, and it's different. You go like down for certain people, up for certain people. I don't know why it's like a subconscious thing, but I imagine it's like an in passing thing. You would stick your hand out as you're passing and like hit the hand as you pass them, maybe. Like that's kind of what I imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some of that. Well, we'll get into that in just a little bit. Why not now? I don't know. So there's some things that document it happening like behind the back, which sounds really cool. I guess like one of these numbers.
Okay.
The reverse Nessie, they call it. That's a reference to an episode.
The reverse surgeon's photo.
Yeah. Call it Nessie drowned. But anyways, yeah, so there's some documentation of that. But it was also a lot of times referred to, if this is helpful, like it's tricky because some of the other names that they use for it. So Zora Neale Hurston, one of the central literary and anthropological figures of the Harlem Renaissance, cataloged the phrase, "Give me five," in her documentation of Harlem slang. She wrote a gathering of Harlem slang. Also, jazz culture, this is a thing that I learned over the course of this, is where hipster culture came from. And 1938, a guy named Cab Calloway wrote a book called Hepster's Dictionary, hipster with an E, two E's really, and it documented the low five as well. But some ways that it was also referred to, so there's the low five, there's also like a way that you would say it is slap me five, slip me five, or give me some skin, which I know give me some skin. And that's a little different than what I would consider like a five. So I'm sure there's general overlap there, but I also know like there have been times where I've like high-fived a friend and like held their hand too. So like even how a high five happens, there's some variance.
Is this
in that
similar to like dapping up nowadays?
Probably, yeah. That's probably a good way to put it. And like something that's going to come up a lot, especially in this section of it, is just the idea of African American vernacular English and like how that permeates into broader American culture, and how really a lot of like not just Black culture, but Black culture, Latino culture, like it all ends up like, I mean, we're a melting pot, right? And so everything melts into the broader culture, for better or for worse. And so it is one of those things where it's like, this definitely started, like low five and all that definitely started in the African American culture at the time. And then obviously when it becomes high five, like I probably gave a high five today, and I
did. Yeah.
I'm probably not Black. I've not done 23andMe yet, so there's a chance, but I'm guessing not. So anyways, that's kind of thing. It's kind of documented in the 20s and the 30s. This is an interesting side note that is jumping ahead to the actual high five, but you can. So there's the classic like up high, down low. Too slow, loser is how I always finished it. That's jumping ahead to the high five, because that can't exist without the high five already being there. But back in like the 1800s, there was a thing that blacksmiths used to teach. It says young apprentices. We're going to say child laborers. The optimal rhythm for operating a bellows. And the rhyme was up high, down low, up quick, down slow. And like I imagine they said that as the proper rhythm and not just whatever rhythm I chose right there. And yeah, so then there's like this idea that like maybe even that is rooted in this like rhyme from the 80s. So there's a deep history to the high five, but that's And all of this is where we can like guarantee it got some amount of origins from, is from the low five, and that already being a thing in African American culture at the time. And even that had started to permeate a bit into, like, it's tricky to say permeate into broader culture. Like, the whites were doing it some too, is what I mean. And I don't know that I like need to couch that in any way. I don't know. I don't know what I feel fine saying, but it like was part of broader culture. So yeah, but not that big. Like, it was much more like just a way for African Americans, at least in the 20s, show solidarity. Like, hey, Jim Crow's coming after us, but we're good. We're gonna make it through this. And so that's that. But then we get to the question. So that's all like, this is history that happened. Then the question is, when was the first high five? And what I've just given you is kind of the most popular telling, the most popular story. And what I will say is it's probably the most popular. It's where it got big. Even if it wasn't the first, it was the most well documented, and it's where it got big. And I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But first I want to get to some of the other theories. So do you have any thoughts or questions? Yeah.
Yeah. I know an actual most documented example of the first high five.
Go for it.
Mabel Pines in the Time Traveler's Pig episode of Gravity Falls gives a high five to a settler woman and in Oregon, on the Oregon Trail, actually, and says, that's called a high five. And then they go back into the future. So
there it is.
I'm sure almost 1 billion people have seen Gravity Fall.
So true. There's a podcast we listen to sometimes called Off Book, the improvised musical podcast. And they just improvise musical every episode. And it's 2 people and then a third like celebrity guest every time. So, and it's like, so the improv school where all of the dropout people went to has an improvised musical training program. So a lot of the people have gone through that and have expertise in that specific area. It's insane what they're able to do. But there's a specific episode that we listened to, and Angela might have been sleeping. I don't remember. But I'm listening to this episode while I'm driving. And one of the people is explaining that some white person, I can't remember who it was, maybe David Bowie, had actually invented rap. And then there's like one of the people that's leading the podcast is obviously a little uncomfortable with that because it's like taking this thing that obviously Black culture created and then attributing it to a white person. And then shortly afterwards, maybe one of them says something along the lines of, also, he invented jazz. And in character, she's like, maybe let's not attribute all those things to him. And here comes Mabel Pines stealing another thing.
So that's really funny because I know jazz existed before David Bowie, but I'm pretty sure rap existed before David Bowie as well.
Yeah.
Like,
it did.
That's such a weird thing to say.
I mean, it was
Was
jokes.
it in jest? Okay.
Yeah, it's a funny podcast.
Yeah.
It's a funny musical every time. So they're just being silly. Anyways, do you have any other thoughts or questions or anything, Gage?
No, I had to throw in there that Mabel Pines had something to do with this.
Yeah.
According to Alex Hirsch. Yeah.
The first high five, courtesy of Waddles. Yeah. So, anyways, there are a few competing origin claims of when and where the first high five happened. So, I was going to do these in order chronologically, but that doesn't feel like the best way to do it. So, for instance, Magic Johnson claims that he and a guy named Greg Kelser, while they were at Michigan State, they're high-fiving all the time. And there aren't specific dates, there aren't named contacts or a specific origin moment. So there's nothing really documenting it. And so even if it did happen, maybe it did happen, right? We can't say it didn't. But if it did happen, it was just one of those things where it's happening kind of, this is the late 70s too. It's happening kind of in parallel with, the high five.
Yeah.
So it's happening in parallel and it's not as documented. So maybe it did happen, maybe it didn't.
Yeah.
But it's not really where we can say the origin was.
It's kind of like us using harlot in college as a word and then it picking back up in culture.
Yeah.
Not even related.
Like, do the harlot shake.
Yeah. Or like we used the word bigot a lot in college, which wasn't as popular in common culture as it is now. But I think it's because it was picking up with our generation.
Yeah.
And it was mostly because we would say, you, sir, are a pagan and a bigot.
Good times.
Good times.
We were talking to our pagan bigot friends.
Yeah, we were. Our heathen buddies.
Those days. Our heathen buddies. So that was the late 70s. It was happening in parallel. Or it's like, I'm trying to think of an example that's not super, super niche. One time, I'm in second grade ish, second, third, somewhere between second and seventh. So there's a range. And my mom decides that she wants to show me Thriller by Michael Jackson, the music video for it. All-time classic music video, worth a watch. I don't know. It's a classic at the very least.
Good song. Great song.
Great song. Classic video. Worth a watch. So my mom decides she wants to show it to us. It was definitely before 7th grade because he was alive still. My mom shows it to us. And then later that week, we would watch VH1. We watched it on the VH1 website. Later that week, we were watching VH1. We would watch it every morning. It would be on the background while we were getting ready for school. Thriller by Michael Jackson pops up as one of their top 10 songs or whatever. And here's the thing. I'm positive it was in parallel and that we didn't accidentally kickstart a Michael Jackson revolution. So, yeah, similar to that.
Yeah.
More niche is the times when people are playing Survivor and multiple people might think that this one move was their idea, but they were each pushing for the idea at the same time. And so was it my idea or was it his idea? But if either one of us hadn't pushed for it, then maybe it wouldn't have happened. It's tricky. Anyways, Magic Johnson, at the very least, didn't popularize the high five, kind of showed up later and said, yeah, Greg Kilster and I were doing that all the time. Which is fine. I don't think he's lying. It's not where it really got popular. So now going back to the 60s, there are things as early as the 1960s. There is a movie, a French movie, and it's got a French name, but I don't speak French. So I'm going to use its English name. It's called Breathless. And I didn't mean to hit that R so hard. Breathless. It's called Breathless. And there's a moment in this movie, I don't know what the plot of this movie is at all, but there are these two kind of detective spy looking dudes that are standing there, and it almost looks as if it's supposed to be a secret handshake, but one of them holds his hand up, and the other one just kind of like applies force with his palm, more horizontal. And a lot of times that's regarded as the first documented high five.
Okay.
But that begs the question, what is a high five? How would you define a high five, Gage?
Well, so I think it's one of those things that maybe the definition has changed a little bit over time.
Sure.
Perhaps. Because I would consider it a high five if I'm walking towards someone and hold my hand out to the side, like perpendicular to my body, and we high five, even though it's a mid five technically. So, like, I would consider calling that a high five. So, I don't know. I think technically I would consider anything where two people are walking toward each other or standing in front of each other or standing behind each other. I don't know. Where two people are hitting hands, two people clapping with each other with each one hand.
The Spirit of the Lord is there with them.
I don't know. Like, that's the gist. The general idea is
sure
that like two people applying force. One person doesn't even have to apply force.
Yeah, you can just dangle it.
Yeah, just dangle it and let the other person smack it.
Yeah. Okay, so is there any sort of intention behind a high five? Is there a specific intention that has to be present?
I'd say at least one party has to have a spirit of mind of like camaraderie. Mm-hmm. I'd say one party does, because you can like angrily high five someone. We did it all the time after soccer games, probably. Like if we were upset that we lost a game, we'd like hit the other team's hand, not in the spirit of brotherliness, you know.
My personal favorite was fist bumping like one of the 3 refs. Good times.
But you know what I mean? Like I think
yeah,
one party has to at least have some semblance of camaraderie, unless it's being forced on both parties.
those classic enforced high fives.
I know.
I guess soccer games, end of soccer games.
Yeah, because I don't think either team necessarily is really always like, yeah, let's be buddies, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think when I think about a high five, if a high five is a part of a handshake, I don't know if I count that as a high five. I know I just called it a high five, but I think that there's something to a high five that is, it's emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just like, hey, we're buds, high five. Yeah. So anyways, in this French movie, Breathless, technically it had the components. Hand went up, hand applied pressure, applied force. The 5 was hide or something. But a lot of times the people, like, it just lacks the cultural context for what makes a high five. Because I don't speak French. I don't wish I did. Just kidding. One day I might learn French. Who knows? And I'll be happy to, by golly. But anyways, it just lacks some of that cultural context, and it wasn't super celebratory. It was just kind of almost like a handshake. So a lot of times it's regarded as not really the first high five. Another thing from the 1960s, I am reading this straight from history, and I am apologizing in advance. 1967, Japanese. 67. Let me check the date on this real quick. 1964, Tokyo Olympics. Yes. So World War II happens, and a number of countries have a bit of kind of PR cleanup to do. So like Germany, for instance. Japan also has a good amount of PR cleanup. I imagine they've got a bit more sympathy on the world stage than
It's where we got
Japan
anime.
does. It's where we got anime.
Their PR cleanup is how we got anime.
Great work, Japan. But anyways, they're trying to kind of reassert themselves on the global stage. And in the 1960s, they put together a powerhouse women's volleyball team. Now, to be clear, this powerhouse women's volleyball team did involve taking these women and like forcing them to play long hours of volleyball and practice really hard, difficult days, whether or not they wanted to. So it's not great. In the 1964 Tokyo Olympics,
to be fair, really quick, I think that's most Olympic athletes.
That's fair.
Whether it's by a coach, parents, or a team.
National pride, baby. The power of anime.
I have the power of God and anime on my side.
They put together a team, and in the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, goes and defeats the Soviet Union, who had a really powerful women's volleyball team at the same time. And so because of that, the Soviet Union, again, this is I wouldn't say this. The Soviet Union begins to refer to them as the witches of the Orient. And at first, it's like in the press, that's how they're referring to them. And at first it's this dig against them. And then eventually this volleyball team realizes, bro, this is sick. This is the coolest nickname you could have possibly given us. And so they embrace it, and they start going by the Witches of the Orient. And they're this really powerful women's volleyball team, and they're cleaning up at the Olympics and at all the different volleyball competitions. And it's documented that they would score a point and then high five each other. And so in volleyball, it kind of makes sense, right? Like you jump up, you've just, say, blocked the ball at the net, and your hand's already up. So what else is there to do but to high five somebody about it, to, show your solidarity, show your support. So it's another one of those things where it's happening, even earlier, it just didn't catch on. It wasn't this thing that was really a part of at least broad American culture, because it was happening in Japan, or on the Japanese team. So yeah, so that's just another thing, the Witches of the Orient. in the 1960s who leaned into that nickname because it was a pretty dope nickname. Yeah, witchcraft isn't cool, but like I would lean into that nickname because it's just powerful. Like I hear Witches of the Orient and I'm like, what war crimes did these women commit? You can't rule them out.
I imagine a Magic the Gathering card or something, you know?
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably, actually. Like,
Yeah,
I could
that's
see
fair.
a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card called that. Yeah.
And it's just that they're so good at volleyball that the Russians are like, it's magic.
Yeah.
Evil magic. So,
Which, actually, if you think about a lot of Russian folklore, kind of makes sense. I mean, the myth of the Baba Yaga is actually rooted in racism and prejudice against the more native, they're not the native people of like the Russian not wilderness, but like the wooded areas of Russia. Siberia and stuff, like native people who were native to there.
Yeah.
Siberians? And it was like Siberians. Sure, I haven't researched this recently or anything.
Sure.
I read a brief thing talking about how the Baba Yaga is like this old tale.
The house?
Technically the witch in the house.
Okay, I just learned about this the other day.
Okay, yeah, so like the witch in the house that walks was essentially like against, like it's a racist stereotype against some of the native people of the area. Was something I read once. Now, I read it in a chain about the Baba Yaga in Smite. So who knows if that was someone just pulling it out of their ears or if that's a legitimate like historical thing. Sure. But I wouldn't put it past them. I think a lot of folklore in different areas does come down to racism and xenophobia if you really look at it strongly.
A lot of colonialist folklore isn't
That's
like
true.
Super fond of the natives.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I was just gonna jump back in, but I don't have to. No, I didn't actually learn about Baba Yaga. Angela, so we were playing a video game, Angela and I, and all of a sudden there's a house walking, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And she says, it's Baba Yaga. And I'm like, what do you know? And she explained just a little bit that it's, yeah, I heard about it. It's the Russian walking house thing.
It's like kind of like almost a boogeyman thing, almost.
Sure.
But like in the woods. And the basis that I saw was that it was something about like them building their houses on stilts. Something along those lines.
You're walking in the woods. You're all alone. Your car is dead or whatever. Out of the
There's
corner
no one
of your
around
eye,
and your phone is dead.
Out of the corner of your eye, you spot him. A house.
Baba Yaga. Which, by the way, John Wick mistranslates, but no one cares.
I have not seen John Wick yet. My fault.
They refer to him as Baba Yaga, and it's like Baba Yaga is an old woman who lives in a house, not the boogeyman or Keanu Reeves.
Dude, I watched a different John Wick than you because that's exactly what I saw. I was like, who's watching this? So that makes sense.
I would watch that.
Okay, great. Okay, so there are two more stories. The most credible one. I'm trying to figure out how I want to pose this. In 2002, a group of students at the University of Virginia established National High Five Day, which was designated to be celebrated annually on the third Thursday of April. By 2007, the founders of the holiday issued a press release claiming that they had discovered the true inventor of the high five, a former college basketball player from Murray State University named Lamont Sleets. They claimed that Sleets had not invented the gesture on the basketball court as part of sports, but rather he had learned it as a young boy from his father. According to the press release, his father had served in the Vietnam War with the 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry. Because they were the 5th Infantry, they were colloquially, they were known as the Five. And so they would greet each other by holding up their hands and shouting their unit's nickname. So, give me 5, etc. And then sometimes, they'd see each other, they'd say, hi, 5. And so that's where the idea is that's where the high five came from. And then the myth continues that Lamont Sleets, he hears about his father doing this in the Vietnam War. He goes to play basketball at Murray State University, and he brings it with him. So he makes it a thing on the court, and they're all doing this together. And all of that seems fine and dandy. So that's 2007 that press release happens, and that's the going story for a while. But in 2013, ESPN officially debunked that story. The founders of National High Five Day publicly admitted later that the entire narrative was a publicity stunt. While Lamont Sleets was a real person that had played guard for Murray State, they had simply scoured college basketball rosters looking for a suitable name to put into their story. So they're just looking like, Lamont Sleets, you'll do.
That guy sounds like he would high five someone.
Yes. The guy, probably big hands, I would bet.
Yeah.
Good for fiving. Yeah, and so Connor Lastowka, one of the founders, openly admitted, just found the guy and made up a story. So for a while, for 2007, 2013, that was the story. The idea was that was when it had happened, but it just wasn't. That was a lie. The most realistic probability of it kind of entering the mainstream is that from 1978 to 1979, so this is after 77. Oh, Isaiah's making noise. He should be in bed. I mean, he's in bed, but I don't know how awake or asleep he is. But anyways, the most extensively documented alternative to the Dodgers' origin story places the high five at the University of Louisville Cardinals men's basketball practice. So it's their practice during the 78 to 79 season. According to this verified narrative, forward Wiley Brown approached his teammate Derek Smith. I know a guy named Derek Smith. Anyways, Wiley Brown approaches his teammate Derek Smith and offers a traditional low five, and Smith says, no, up high. And the reasoning was that, why are we staying down so low? We jump so high. And so Brown is like, yeah, heck yeah, and does a high five. And you can watch highlight reels of their practice, and I believe even some of their games, you can see them doing the high five. And it's this thing that they as a team are doing. And it was captured live during a 1980 national television broadcast, this is an interesting thing. The 1977 baseball game they talk about, there's no living footage of this. So it's documented, and we'll get into a little bit more about that later, but there aren't images of it. There's no video of it. It just happened. But there's footage of it in the 1980s. There's 1978, 1979, and then into 1980s, there's footage of the high fives. As a matter of fact, at one point, a guy named Al McGuire, who's apparently a legendary sports announcer, is announcing the game. And Wiley Brown does something, and he says, Mr. Brown came to play. And they're giving him the high five handshake. High five. So at one point, they're still figuring out what this thing's called, because he calls it the high five handshake. And this is 1980 that he refers to it as the high five handshake. We weren't alive yet, but we were close. We were coming.
Yeah. Only like half of our lifetime before us. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. 16 years before we were born, it was being called the high five handshake because it wasn't a big thing yet.
Holy cow.
So there's documented footage of it. It caught on. And that's another one of those things where it's happening probably in parallel. It might be impacted by the Dodgers at this point, but it's probably happening in parallel. So those are kind of the most prolific claims about the other origins of the high five. Do you have any thoughts or questions, Gage?
No, what is insane to me is that we landed on the moon.
Yeah.
Before the high five.
Before anyone ever thought, I should raise my hand so someone else can slap my hand. We were on the moon. That's so true.
That's just crazy to me. Not because of the ingenuity of it or anything, but just the moon landing predates the high five.
They're on the moon and they're like, man, I feel the need to celebrate this somehow.
I feel the need to slap your hand.
Oh man, I really hope someone invents a way to celebrate before I die.
And they did.
Something I didn't include in this that I'm actually going to really quickly Google.
Also, I was spitballing there. I don't actually know what year we landed on the moon.
69.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was right.
That's
I
really
was
funny.
really hoping that it wasn't like 78.
JFK never got to see a high five.
Bro.
Yeah. It's maybe a little more poignant that Martin Luther King Jr. didn't, but neither of them. No, I didn't think to look this up, but I was curious. Like, man, when did the chest bump come around? Because what if the chest bump was first?
Predates.
But it
I
doesn't.
would bet it is. I would bet it does predate the high five.
According to this, it seems like it came about maybe similar timing to the high five. So it's like once people realized that you could celebrate up, they're like, bro, what have we been missing out on?
Okay. So just because I'm curious,
Yeah.
I looked up the origins of the fist bump, and it also says it originated in the 70s, popularized by NBA players and cultural references with roots in earlier gestures like the dap and boxing glove taps. So now I need to know the dap started in 60s and 70s. Okay. Actually, no, soldiers in Vietnam, African-American soldiers during Vietnam, again, a symbol of solidarity, strength, and defiance. Okay.
Yeah.
So the 70s.
Yeah, they're inventing all kinds of celebratory gestures.
Celebratory and solidarity.
Yeah.
Solid.
1968, the Olympics Black Power salute happens. The image where Tommy Smith and John Carlos have won the 200-meter dash, and they like raise their fists in solidarity as like the Black Power kind of thing. So really just 60s, late 60s through late 70s.
60s through the late 70s.
Busy. And
although technically, it does go back to the 20s with low fives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
It was a busy century.
I mean, busy century, but also they were like...
Busy century for hand gestures.
Okay. Now, the middle finger gesture, often called flipping the bird, dates back to at least 423 BC.
Yes, because originally my understanding is that there were people who would cut off the middle finger. It had something to do with archery, and so they would wave it around as an insult to people who had lost theirs. Like, that's my understanding of that.
Yeah.
I was referring to other things, but...
I know what you were referring to, Gage. I laughed at that.
Okay.
And I tried to bring us back. It was a very funny joke, Gage. Yeah. No, it was really interesting. The low five has been around for 50 years. And then eventually a number of people...
And the middle finger's been around for 2,000.
But a number of people realize, oh, we could do this higher. This is pretty cool. What if we just did a bunch of stuff now? Like, we could bump chests. We could bump fists. We can bump so much stuff. And that's that. There's still celebrations to be figured out. Like, one time, Caleb Clay and I did a chest bump. We were playing basketball in the gym at church. And something happened. We had scored a goal together or whatever. And we did a chest bump. And right at the peak of our chest bump, our faces, our lips, just ever so gently touched. And it was a long time back to the ground for me to process what had just happened. And so I'm on my way down to the ground and I'm thinking like, okay, that I think that just happened, but we're just not going to talk about that. We're not going to acknowledge that. And that's that. I'm going to die with this. And then we land, and Caleb says, "Did we just kiss?" And that's the story of my first kiss.
Speaking of people we need to have on the podcast.
That'd be a lot of fun. Caleb, if you're listening, we would love to have you on. You're a great dude. And yeah, it'd be fun to have you on. Yeah. So anyways, there's a whole new world there. The chest bump into kiss little maneuver. Anyways, those are all the most kind of popular claims as to where the high five came from. But the most popular, what's documented as where it probably most officially came from is that Dodgers game, 1977. And so we go back to the scene where we just were, that Baker had hit his home run, gone in, and Burke has his hand up and he's boom, and high fives him. And that's that. That's where we were. Moments later, feeding off the residual energy of the historic milestone, Burke, the initiator, the high five initiator, steps up to the plate and hits his own home run. And when he crosses home plate, who's there waiting for him but Dusty Baker, hand in the air, waiting for a high five, and it happened again. Although this specific game wasn't nationally televised, like I mentioned earlier, the narrative of the gesture was captured by sports journalists and photographers present in the stadium. I tried looking for photos. We'll see. I didn't have much luck in my hunt.
Okay. What I find amazing.
Well, there's a photo. I just didn't search for photos.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a great photo.
It is a great photo.
It captures the awkwardness of the first ever high five, of being
No, it does, because you could definitely tell he's like, I guess I'm putting my hand up.
Okay.
Almost looks like he's afraid he's going to get hit.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to capture some of that ambiguity in the story at the beginning. Like something was happening at home plate. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just looking up the picture myself.
Yeah. So anyways, it's captured by photographers and sports journalists, but crucially, the motion caught on immediately, not just with the fans, but with the Dodgers organization itself. So the Dodgers, they realize it's super visual and it's kind of this really cool thing that their players have done. And they've already secured their place in the playoffs even before this game, but they've got the playoffs coming up. They start using it as a marketing tool. And so they start actively promoting the high five as their unofficial team salute. You can find merch with Dodgers and hands like this, high five. And so they begin promoting it. They print and sell Dodgers high five t-shirts featuring a graphic of two hands slapping. And so this marketing push acted as this cultural accelerant. It helps it explode. So coupled with the high profile nature of their historic season, because they've just had one of the best seasons in baseball history up to that point, and their national media exposure, those merchandising and promotional efforts launched the gesture into the public consciousness really for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so what started as the spontaneous, joyful thing was branded, like all good, spontaneous, joyful things become. Eventually, it got marketed, and then it became the inception point of the high five as a global cultural phenomenon. And then, 3 years later, in 1985, was officially incorporated into the Oxford English Dictionary as a noun. And then in 1981, as a verb. It had phases. Yeah.
Well, but
Oxford English called it high five. And so that's kind of the history of the high five and kind of where it started. So I mentioned that the high five is American history, and it's African American history, which means it's American history. But another interesting thing about it is that the high five is gay history. Because Glenn Burke wasn't out publicly outside of his teams at that point, but eventually would come out as gay and was out to a lot of his teammates at that point. So the first openly gay baseball player ever created, in some ways, helped create the high five as the big thing that it was. And so I just want to talk a little bit about Glenn Burke and his life and what he got up to. So born And on November 16th, 1952, in Oakland, California, Glenn Burke was really good at sports. A lot of sports. I say a lot. The most you can do in high school is like 3 at a time, 1 per trimester.
I mean, who knows?
Ish.
Maybe in like the 60s, you could do more.
That's true.
70s.
That's true. But at Berkeley High School in California, he led the Yellow Jackets basketball team. This is basketball. He's a professional baseball player. He led the basketball team to an undefeated season and to a Northern California championship in 1970. Despite being under 6 feet tall, he had great verticality. Dude could jump. He was capable of dunking a basketball with both hands, despite being under 6 feet tall, a feat that earned him the title of Northern California's High School Basketball Player of the Year. He initially attended the University of Nevada, Reno, on a dual scholarship for baseball and basketball, but in 1971, he was heavily scouted and then eventually recruited by the LA Dodgers. So ended up playing baseball for the Dodgers. He kind of zipped his way through the minor leagues. He was a really good outfielder, probably that verticality. And he was also great at stealing bases. And a lot of times, like scouts and coaches were like, this guy, he is a generational talent. He is one of the best to ever play this game. And so, yeah, had a good career and played well, was really good at baseball. Got to start in Game 1 of the 1977 World Series, which 1977 is this year.
Mm-hmm.
So the playoff run obviously goes well. However, behind all of this, he carried an immense psychological burden. While he wasn't actively holding press conferences regarding his sexuality, he refused to live a completely closeted life or go to extreme deceptive lengths to hide his identity. He was out to several of his teammates, many of whom, like team captain Davey Lopez, were entirely accepting, describing him as the beloved core of the team's chemistry and maintaining that no one cared about his lifestyle. However, this is the 1970s. The idea that no one cares about his lifestyle just was not accurate. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, for the Dodgers management, his sexuality was not a private matter or his own thing, but it was an institutional liability that threatened the conservative image of baseball. And so there was a lot of hostility from the front office. Yeah, that just kept coming. At one point, or not at one point, but the Dodgers manager Tommy Lasorda reportedly harbored intense animosity towards Burke, which was exacerbated by the fact that Burke had befriended Lasorda's friend Tommy Lasorda Jr., who was also a gay man. And then, tragically, Lasorda Jr. would later die of AIDS-related complications in 1991, an event that his father, Tommy Lasorda Sr., publicly and stubbornly attributed to pneumonia and just kind of lived in lifelong denial about his son's sexuality. The pressure from the front office reached a breaking point when Dodgers general manager I'm going to say Campanis to be safe, approached Burke directly. He's trying to suppress rumors. And so he tells Burke, essentially, hey, if you agree to marry a woman, I will provide you a lavish honeymoon, like the best honeymoon you could possibly imagine, if you'll just marry a woman. At which point, Burke apparently famously responded, a woman? Like you don't, like have you met me?
Like that is an absurd thing to say.
Yeah.
Like to ask of someone, like knowing, or he probably I didn't know he was trying to figure out, right? Like that's what the guy was trying to do. Or did he know, you think?
It sounds like a number of his teammates knew.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be super shocking if his general manager knew. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say, if he was like trying to figure out without being direct, I could understand that for the culture a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
But like that'd be like I am a straight man. That'd be like going up to me and being like, hey, I want you to marry a man and I'm going to pay for a good honeymoon for you.
Yeah. And like the idea, that doesn't make the idea more appetizing.
No, I was just like,
yeah,
that's just not, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Totally understand it. And he says no. Well, he says a woman. And because they're unable to force him into compliance, the Dodgers traded him, even though he's this generational talent. He's awesome at the sport. But the idea of his sexuality being a liability is big enough that they trade him to the Oakland Athletics in 1978. This is the year after he invented the high five and played for them in the World Series and was a generational talent. The trade was wildly unpopular among his teammates, who recognized it as a punitive discriminatory measure rather than a strategic baseball decision. And unfortunately, when he went to Oakland, it wasn't much better there. Yeah, it wasn't much better there. So he's immediately subjected to homophobia from athletics manager Billy Martin, who's notoriously abrasive and combative. And he reportedly introduced Burke to his new teammates by using a homophobic slur. I don't know that many of them. I've got educated guesses based on the few I know. And then the social isolation was bad. Like, some Oakland teammates refused to shower in the same facility as him and all of that stuff. And then eventually during spring training, Burke got a knee injury. And so Billy Martin, the general manager, used that as the opportunity to demote him to the minor leagues, which essentially spelled the end of his career. And so essentially realizing that the athletic establishment would never accept him for who he was, he walked away from professional baseball in 1980 at the age of 27, leaving this really immense potential unfulfilled. Later, he would reflect on his premature retirement, and he wrote, "Prejudice drove me out of baseball sooner than I should have, but I wasn't changing. Prejudice just won out." And so really a heartbreaking stance and a heartbreaking approach. Yeah, and there's more here still, but just wanted, I felt like looking at the high five as African American history, it would have felt like a disservice to not also look at it as gay history and to acknowledge that gay American history is American history in the same way that white American history is. It's all these these stories of things that people have overcome and things that, fights that people have fought and things that have happened to Americans that make American history. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about our country is, and there are people that would vehemently disagree with me. I think one of the most beautiful things about our country is the fact that it's made up of the lives and stories of hundreds of millions of people who aren't the same as each other and who are different in very drastic ways. And I think that that's beautiful. So anyways, following his painful exit from Major League Baseball, he relocated to the Castro district in San Francisco, which was essentially an area that was serving as kind of the epicenter of the American gay rights movement. And so when he was there, he wasn't an outcast. He was celebrated, which is, I think that we all want to go where we're celebrated. And there are talks about, our church is effective when, if you think that somebody ought not be gay, is it effective to shun them and then they just go to people that say, yeah, you're right. You do what you want to do. All kinds of questions there, but people want to go where they feel loved and supported. And so he went there and he was loved and supported. I didn't know this existed. Have you ever heard of the Gay Olympics?
No.
Yeah, it's called the Gay Games now. I'm curious if the Olympics kind of came down on him. But yeah, in 1982, he competed. This is Glenn Burke, competed in track and won medals in the 100-meter and 200-meter sprints, and then later competed in basketball in 1980 at the Gay Games, which is a thing. So that's a thing, an extra thing to learn. He also anchored a highly successful team in the Gay Softball League. I feel like just the number of times I say gay, it feels like I'm being a bully or something. How about you go play in the Gay World Series? And he did. In the summer of 1982, he helped lead a highly successful team in the Gay Softball League, taking them to the Gay World Series in the summer of 1982. And so he's on Castro Street, which is where this, the gay rights movement is really kind of popping off in San Francisco. And he brings the high five with him because the dude invented it. He can do whatever he wants with the high five. And so, he's high-fiving fellow gay athletes, people on the street, friends, patrons in local bars. And so it almost within the gay community for at least a season takes on that same like low five kind of camaraderie sense of like we're in this together kind of meaning. And so it's like the high five is temporarily like, and maybe even still, I don't know, I'm not like well versed enough to know. Anyways, it like still it's like this gay icon. So that's another interesting thing. And in 1982 is when he kind of came out to the public, which to be fair is the same year that he was in the gay games. And I don't know the order that these two things happened in. I assume he came out first because it's a little awkward if he plays the games and he's like, by the way, like I wasn't faking it. Like yeah, sorry. But anyways, like so many athletes experience, and I don't need to say that, but like a lot of athletes experience, his post professional life became difficult. So it started, and I mean, there's the idea of intersectionality, right? Where like a black person, like a black man might have these experiences, and then you can write about the black experience based on what the black man experiences. And a woman might have these experiences, and you can write about what a woman experiences because of like what a white woman experiences. But with these two things, you don't really have what the black woman experiences, but you think you do, but you don't. Or like to be a black woman, like you just don't. Maybe it's hard to acknowledge that it can be the worst parts of both, for instance. And so as someone who is both, or not both, like he's a retired athlete, kind of against his will, has a lot of prime ahead of him. He's a black man and he's a gay man. There are a lot of things coming together that lead to his life just really declining. And not that any of those are like moral things that lead to decline, just the way that culture was set up, the way that society was set up, led to him being isolated and depressed, which led to things like drugs. He ended up developing a severe addiction to cocaine, which over the time destroyed his physical health and financial stability. And then he eventually becomes homeless. And part of that was accelerated by the fact that in 1987, when he was walking in San Francisco, he was struck by a car in an accident that would crush his leg and foot, which essentially ended his athletic mobility. Like he was done being an athlete at that point. So now he's disabled, destitute, battling severe addiction, and homeless, and he's living on the streets in Castro. And so even he's at one point, like even he's living in this place that was like his place, and where he was kind of a big member of what made this place special. And now he's living on the streets, and that's what's left for him at this point. So it really has kind of a major, I feel like fall from grace isn't what I want to say, because I don't think any of this is rooted in morality necessarily. I think it's just life happened to him and it sucked. And now this is where he is. And so that's where he ends up. And then eventually, he did spend time incarcerated for drug offenses as well. But then eventually he also contracted HIV, which progressed to AIDS, and his health just continued deteriorating. Interestingly enough, during this time period, the Oakland Athletics actually provided some financial support for his medical care, which is weird because they were like super homophobic when he was playing for them. But then on May 30th, 1995, at the young age of 42, he died from AIDS-related complications. And so that's what happened after the history of the high five. The high five was created, and then that's what ended up happening to Glenn Burke. And then following his death, his name was immortalized on a panel of the AIDS Memorial Quilt, which was a massive activist project spearheaded by Cleve Jones to humanize the victims of the epidemic that the Reagan administration had pointedly ignored. We haven't forgotten Ronald Reagan. Yeah, Reagan didn't handle it well.
He didn't handle a lot of things well.
Yeah, he's touted as like the guy.
Genuinely, like, under his administration, pushed drugs
Yeah.
into, I mean, like legitimately, you can trace it back using the FBI or CIA, one of the two. He
Yeah.
pushed drugs specifically into African American neighborhoods. Like
Yeah.
he did that.
Yeah. And then that's a thing I'm talking about when I mentioned like the intersectionality is like I'm not saying it's like a moral thing that this guy ends up in drugs,
Mm-hmm.
but like it's being pushed by the government.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So in his final years, despite the immense suffering he endured, he expressed kind of a profound piece regarding his legacy. He told People magazine in 1994, so a year before he passed away, that his overriding mission as a gay ball player had been to break stereotypes, and he firmly believed he had succeeded. They can't ever say now that a gay man can't play in the majors, he stated, because I'm a gay man and I made it. And so, yeah, so that was that. And then eventually, decades later, I mean, it's decades. It's tricky.
Mm-hmm.
But the MLB and the franchises began to reckon with their treatment of Burke, and he was among the first inductees into the National Gay and Lesbian Sports Hall of Fame in 2013. In 2015, the Oakland Athletics honored him as part of their Athletics Pride Night, which feels like a little like it's fair. It's a good gesture, but it's also like
you're the ones who cut him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and it's tricky because like, what else can
new
you
ownership,
do? That's
right?
true. Yeah, we fired that Billy guy.
Yeah.
They did invite his brother to throw the first pitch. And then in 2021, they officially renamed the annual event the Glenn Burke Pride Night and used it as a fundraiser for the Oakland LGBTQ plus Center's Glenn Burke Clinic. So, yeah, so that's really everything that I've got. Just kind of some concluding thoughts, which is essentially the high five. The origin of it is a little crazy. Started in at least the 1920s and then kind of concurrently evolved into the high five all around the late 70s. Just a bunch of people were like, wait a second. What if we did it up? And then, yeah. And in a lot of those, because the low five is such an African American thing, the high five almost universally, except for the Japanese women, is like this piece of Black history and like this thing that African American sports people did.
Athletes,
that's the word. Sports did. And so it's interesting, like the high five is African American history, it's gay history, and because it's those things, it's American history, and it's beautiful. That's what I've got. Do you have any last thoughts or questions, Gage?
Well, so I was just thinking about this while we were talking about some of the injustices going on at that time. Have you seen the movie The Dallas Buyers Club?
I watched it like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's actually pretty inaccurate to the true story of that man, as most movies are. But it did accurately portray the fact that like there was treatment that was allowing people to live with AIDS longer and better, better quality of life that was available and was fairly inexpensive. But the reason that so many people ended up dying was because they were pushing drugs that actually made the symptoms worse. And so it was almost like a eugenics thing when you really think about it. I don't know how intentional that was on the behalf, like from the perspective of medical professionals, because there's a lot of stuff that happens that like hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah.
And so like there are times where like you want to believe that the people who are in charge of medical things are doing what's best for you. You want to believe that, but there have been many times throughout history where they didn't. And this was a really good example of that.
Yeah. I honestly think it'd be interesting to do an episode on there's like, I can't remember what website it is, but there's like a timeline of the history of AIDS. And it's like 1982, the first like journal article is written about this specific cough that keeps showing up in hospitals in this area or whatever. And then it just goes from there. And it's really interesting, the history of it. And like, yeah, how it went from this unsurvivable thing unless you happen to have the right genes to nowadays, like you can, I mean, so AIDS is like kind of end stage HIV, if I understand correctly.
I think.
But like nowadays, you can live a normal full life with HIV and like and have unprotected sex and have confidence that you're not going to pass HIV to your partner if you're like on the right medicine regimen. Regimen. Yeah. And so it's really interesting, the path along the way, and the needless deaths that happened along the way, and the needless deaths that are still happening now because not everyone around the world has access to the medicine that's necessary. So there's, yeah, it could be a really interesting episode to do at some point. It's kind of a depressing episode, so maybe we won't do it. Who knows?
Yeah, we tend to avoid depressing things.
Yeah. Yeah. The key is to start with the high five and then see where you end up.
Yeah.
But anyways, this has been the history of the high five, and I hope it was good for you. I hope you liked it. Dusty Baker is still alive to this day. I think it was a 2013 article where he had his quote. It's like, well, he had his hand up and it seemed like the thing to do. It was an ESPN article where he said that, and he's still alive. He was coaching back then, but that was 13 years ago, and he was 62. So he's 75-ish now, and I hope he's not still coaching, just for his own sake. Go retire. You've earned it. Go live a good life. But yeah, so that's that. As always, thank you guys for watching. If you're still here, appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Gage, for listening.
I wasn't saying thank me. I was going to say I'll handle the other thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gage, I guess. Get off my back. No, Gage, thanks for listening. Thank you for being the beating heart behind this podcast. If you could do this podcast without me, I couldn't do this podcast without you. So thank you, Gage. Now go thank other people.
Well, thank you, DJ, for hanging out with me, for studying this, and for putting this episode together as well. I want to say thank you for joining this. You say that. I don't think I would do this without you. So I appreciate our friendship over the years, and also this time that we get to consistently spend together. But a couple other thank yous. As always, I want to thank Adam Ward, Jared Scrother, Jacob Casey, Fox Royale. We probably don't need to thank all of them in every episode, but we for sure need to thank all of them in our hearts every day.
Amen.
But thank you guys for helping us out with music at different times. This episode has an intro from Adam Ward and an outro from Jared Scrother. You can check all of these guys out on Spotify. Jacob Casey is under Ancona. Adam Ward is Adam Ward, and he has a bunch of hands on his face. Jared Scrother is not on Spotify at this time, I don't think. But I normally leave a link to his link tree where he has film stuff and other things going on as well. And Fox Royale. We just had Nathan on to talk about pretty much anything but his music. Classic. So that was fun. But thank you, all of you guys who have been a part of the ride. If you would like to be a part of an episode, or you would like to join in any way, whether that be that we give you some kind of a shout out, or we have you on for an interview, or you just come on to teach us about something, reach out to us. You can email us at nocatspod@gmail.com, comment below, or, I don't know, send a carrier pigeon. Whatever is best for you.
Thanks. As always, we've said as always a bunch of this episode. Like forever. If you don't appreciate us, if you don't like our thanks, please, 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 just do what seems to be the thing to do and go thank yourselves. See you guys next time.